Bonjour mes amis, comment allez-vous aujourd'hui? Ça va bien ici. I hope it's going good for you because it's going fantastically over here. But the reason is because we've been preparing. And I'm going to take you into the corner, the stove corner, to show you some of the stuff that I picked up yesterday. Because as I told you in the last talk, go get oil products. I went and picked up a few. I also picked up some plants. So I'll show you what we're going to be planting this summer, hopefully in another 2 months, that we'll be producing in 1 or 2 more years. Remember, you got to think in the future. But let's start off with some questions because I've been really bad about answering questions. So from Jane Hayden, 6176. Hello, Jane. Your comment really good. Thanks. How do you have it set up to buy you coffee? Well, you can buy me coffee by either getting a paid subscription over my Substack at Cork Graham, and they give you 2 options. But if you don't want to do those options, I also have PayPal and Venmo. I think it's the same account for PayPal, but it's just at Cork Graham at Venmo. So you can just send whatever you ever want to send for the year, for the month, whatever. Okay, so I started to watch Michael Yon earlier and couldn't get past his projection of the illegals in uniform. This has been the plan. Yon and I have been talking about this for freaking years, which is the idea that they brought these illegals in here, and these are what I was talking about before, which is the American Hessians. Remember the history of the Hessians. Who are the ones who did the murdering at the Boston Massacre? Yeah, Hessians were shooting Americans. Why? That's what these totalitarians do. They bring in foreign nationals who have no connection to the people that they're oppressing and have them do the dirty work, and then there's no conflict. That's the reason they've been trying to, there's a plan set up to move sheriffs out of one department to another department. But see, it's the locals who voted for the sheriff, right? So there's a emotional tie between the citizens of that county. Here in Alaska, we have boroughs. We don't have sheriffs. I wish we did, but we don't have sheriffs. We have troopers. But thankfully, most of our troopers are Alaskans first, and then feds later. That's very important. This is the separation between state and the feds in Washington. And it's very important, they'll be coming up in the future. And you should be paying attention to that when you're paying attention to the news. Whatever news you're able to get, because of how they're really playing the game. People have no idea what's happening in Israel right now. People have no idea what's happening in Iran. We have to go through our own assets. Jan, myself. Remember, I've been doing this since 1983. I've built contacts throughout the world since 1983 when I was 18 years old. I learned to do that from my dad. Thank God my dad built a really good Rolodex starting when, he started working for General Telephone in 1958 in Cuba. Remember I told you my dad worked for General Telephone, putting up telephone lines all throughout Cuba from 1958 until 1958, 59, so until 61. And then from there he went down to South America and he was putting up telephone lines from Ecuador all the way down to Chile. That's how he met Perón. You know Perón? He was the Presidente de la Argentina, with Evita, his wife. Yeah, my dad met him. Very interesting interaction. It was kind of like, oh, would you like to meet Perón? Kind of like, oh, Perón was like this arrogant asshole who thought that everybody wanted to meet him, especially the gringos who happened to be staying at the same hotel in, where was that? In Lima, Peru at the time. This would have been about 1961, before he met my mom in 62 in Quito. And then, because they were married for 2 years before I was born. So that would have been 62, 60. So they were probably dating in 61. Because if you know traditional dating in Latin America, it's kind of like you go with a chaperone. I remember when I was dating in Honduras. And in El Salvador. Shoot, the woman I almost married, the woman who was taken away from me in 1989 during the Tet Offensive of San Salvador. Stuff that I don't really like talking about. So having your contacts, building your Rolodex. Well, it used to be Rolodexes, right? Now we have your contacts list in your iPhone or your Samsung. Networking is very important. Networking is what I talk about when I talk about community. Remember, what is going to get you through all that's coming right now is food, water, shelter, security, community. Community is what Catherine Austin Fitz talks about. That's why she's got a Rolodex. We all have Rolodexes. Can you imagine what my Rolodex is if I first was working as a combat photojournalist for AP and Reuters out of Bangkok, working under Dennis Gray. Dennis Gray was the bureau chief for AP at the time. If you don't know who Dennis spells his name, Denis. Who hooked me up with Dennis Gray? If you read my book that Jane Hayden was kind enough to purchase and read, you would know that it was John Everingham who got me hooked up with AP. And who was John Everingham? John Everingham was played by Michael Landon in the movie called Love is Forever, which is about John, an Australian, who got to Vietnam in '66 when he was 16 years old and was driving around. So he beat me by 2 years. He was a combat photographer and translator for ABC, CBS in Vietnam 2 years before I got, in terms of age, 2 years before I got to age. So when people look at me, oh, you were 18 years old and you just took off and asked for a leave of absence from your Marine Corps Reserve unit for the Reserve Officer Training Corps in order to go to Asia to be a combat photographer to cover the Khmer Rouge and cover the search for American MIAs in Vietnam and Laos and Cambodia when you were 18 and the danger involved in there? Yeah, but who was my mentor by the time I got there? Remember, wolves pack together. Good people pack together. Evil people pack together. Evil people like Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. And I had another question from, let's see. That was actually a good question from Missouri 82. I'll answer you. Your professional assessment, is Trump a bad guy? Who does Trump hang out with now? I think when he was younger and you saw him hanging out and you could see he's not a racist. He's not a racist. But who does he hang out with now? The people who own him. The question is, when did they own him? Did they own him during the first administration? For sure he's owned by the second administration. But was he owned in the first administration? And at the beginning of the first administration? And how did he become? I've told you what I've heard from my assets, my contacts in D.C., who report on this, and they can't publicly report on this, but hey, I'm just giving it to you as an opinion, which is Trump became president because he got slighted by Hillary and Bill, because he wasn't invited to Chelsea's wedding. After years of Trump saying, hey, if Bill Clinton ever shows up at my hotel or at my golf clubs, he gets a straight run to the front of the line. He doesn't have to wait for anybody to go out and get his sets, right? But then when it came to Chelsea getting married, he couldn't believe that he was not on the invitation list. And from then on, he became a toast. So his ego was slighted. And because of that, he ran against Hillary, which was shocking. And he ran on a really good platform. But the problem is, this is the problem with politicians. So is Trump a bad guy? Now he's a bad guy. I consider him a bad guy. Just because he's in D.C. Just because he's in the cabal. Think about what is happening right now and has been happening for decades. And in the long run, a couple hundred years in this country alone. But it's been done all around by the same people. Which is, while you and I, as the common citizens, are fighting each other and bitching at each other, oh, it's because of the Democrats. Oh, it's because of the Republicans. And we're getting into these bloody messes where people are beating up each other. People are killing each other already based on what party they are. Remember that nutjob who killed that poor kid? Just because I think he was conservative, Republican, and the other person was a Democrat and a nutjob and ran him over, killed this poor kid? They do this to us. But if you go in and you sit on, and I have sat in on these things, these interactions by Republicans and Democrats behind closed doors, They're the best of buddies. And they're laughing at us because they're making money off how well they can keep us all fractionated. Because they know whenever we finally get our ass shit together and we stop bitching at each other and we take control of DC, they're fucked. And when I say fucked, I mean like French Revolution fucked. I mean like, Romania and Ceausescu and his wife fucked. That's the execution. That's the time where we say, you know what? You've not only stolen our money, you've taken food from our children. You've also sent our boys, our sons, our daughters to fight your fucked up wars in other countries, not to defend this country. In contrast, you've sent us into wars because the cabal who owns you has sent us to go and fight these wars in order to create more and more friction in the world. Because remember, this is all about chaos. This is chaos theory applied. Divide and conquer. When you're the smallest minority in the world, because we're not even talking about Jews, we're talking about the cabal. This is a group of people that only survives through mystery and darkness. That's why it's an occult. It's a cult of occult. Mystery, darkness. We don't know who they are. That's why I say if you're all bitching about freaking George Soros, well, then you're being a sucker again. Because if you know it's George Soros, that's not the guy in charge. That's why I gave you that link. Please go watch that in the previous episode. Remember, all important links to whatever I'm talking about. I'm not keeping this secret. I'm not trying to hoard this. You know, I'm not like other guys who's like, well, I'm the only one who knows this, and I'm the one who found this. When in reality, all these other people who are talking to you like they're the authority, no, they just went and talked to the other guy. Because unless they're specialists and they actually practice this, like if they're a journalist, they went and they got the information from somebody else. And likely, they got the information through a contact and a reference from another journalist. Like I get contacts, I always get freaking contacted, I get texts from Jan all the time. I get contacted from all these other journalists because they know how long I've been in this business. Just because I don't fight in this business the way I did. I don't go into the combat the way I did when I was 18, 19, 20. Shoot, by 21, I was fighting. That's why when people say, how did CIA hires and recruits people based on, remember what I told you? I know from personal experience. They know the trajectory they're on, and if they like what you're doing, and they realize it fits with what they want to do. And at that time, Reagan was actually trying to freaking save this country from communism. The sad part is the people who control the United States are the same people who control the Russians and the Soviet Union. But does it matter who brought the tiger into your bedroom and turned out the lights and is waiting for that tiger to eat you so that when they turn the lights on, all they see is a blood spot where that tiger had fed? And that tiger happened to have been back in the 80s and the 90s and the 70s and the 60s and the 50s and the 30s, in the 20s, was communism. Does it matter that they were the ones? Yeah, it does in the end, when hopefully we all get together and we can go and hunt these fuckers down and remove them from the planet and send them to the darkness that they actually aspire to, but what they're trying to sacrifice us to send down there. And they do it by getting us all angry at each other and raging at each other and divided against each other. That's how this thinning occurs. They can't thin us out unless we kill ourselves, because that's what we're doing. When we fight each other, it's literally it's brother killing brother, sister killing sister. They know this. That's why they've been doing this. That's why they've been getting us all raged up. And there are people who are just true believers in all this bullshit that they've come up with. And the sad thing, those are going to have to be sacrificed by us because we're not going to die willingly. When it comes down to it, I'm not going to freaking die, because that would be suicide to me. If I laid down and said, well, I'm just going to go to the afterlife, because kind of like that scene, God, what was that movie? It was a good one. I'll think of it later, but it's not the Cowboys, with John Wayne. It was the other one with Billy, was it Greenleaf or whatever his name was back in, I don't even know if I think he is still alive. But it was about a kid who went off with a group of cowboys that were going off, and they end up finding this ministry. And they said, well, God had sent us to this land. Kind of remind you of something? God had sent us to this land, but we're peaceful. We don't fight. So the cowboys defend it from the owners of this land, who was a real asshole himself. But they kill each other. And then after it's all gone, the kids said, well, you got to bury these people. These people died for you. Oh, we've got to move on because this land is no longer sacred. It's got blood on it. Dang, is that like Israel right now? All these people, all these Israelis are running from Israel because there's a lot of blood appearing on there. And it's not being reported in the news. Yeah. Yeah. So watch this as we're going. Watch how they're playing us. Think critically. I mean, you're getting all this information from Jan. You're getting all this information from me. You're getting all this information. And be very clear about people. Jan is giving you some good content. Catherine Austin Fitz is giving you some very good content. David Gary Webb. Hopefully I can get him on. I want to talk with him because he and I have done the same thing. And I think about the same year. Yeah, he said in 2009 he went to Sweden. Well, I started my plan to come here in 2008. He started his plan in 2008 at the same time. But he already had stocks in Sweden, so he went with that. He went to Sweden. Which, frankly, I want to have him because I want to talk to him. Said, did you believe, did you think that Sweden would be stupid enough to no longer be a neutral country in the next full global war? Because they were smart during World War I. They were smart during World War II. Because remember what I told you? The wealthiest never get into wars. They let the other suckers get into them. Like us. They use us to make the money for them. Does that piss you off? It should. It pisses me off. That's why I will never go into another war except on my own soil. And then I'll go Genghis Khan. And if you know what Genghis Khan did, that's the old school. Think about the way wars were fought back in the day. See, Genghis Khan was very smart. Genghis Khan did not kill the people. Because if you kill the people, you lose people who are actually being abundant and making things happen. No, what you do is you go in and you take out all the leaders. He killed every one of them. Every frickin' one of them. And that's what we should be doing in this country when this war will be over. And it won't be a war. Remember, it's just going to be a war of chaos. Because it won't be one side against the other. What will happen is sides will come up out of that as people try to realize we need to create community. Because if not, we're just going to be killing each other. But there's definitely one side that wants to take over, and we don't want that. We don't want socialism. We don't want communism. And hopefully there will be a side that actually will go back to reading the U.S. Constitution again. How many of you who are Americans have actually read the U.S. Constitution, read the Bill of Rights, have read the Declaration of Independence, read the U.S. Constitution, read it 2 or 3 times? Read it to yourselves. Read it to your family. Get them interested in it. If you're an American, you need to understand that's the only document that will save us. But not just know it. This is the thing. So many people are so ethereal now. That's by plan. You've read all this stuff. You know all this stuff. But yet you don't act on it. How many people who know this stuff live in the city? How many people I've told, you need to get into the country. You're only going to survive this in the country. If you're in the city, you're just going to be a slave or you're going to be food. That's it. There's no other reason for you to be around for these people who are going to control the cities. They're not going to be able to control us in the country. They don't have the wherewithal. They don't have the infrastructure. One of the things you learn when you get rising up in rank, when you're starting to run command, when you're starting to run platoons, when you're running squad, you learn logistics. Logistics will win or lose a battle. Logistics will win or lose a war. The logistics right now with us getting into frickin' Iran is bad. And it shows that Trump doesn't know logistics militarily. But the ones who did, they're either quitting or they're getting fired. And that should make you question what's happening. Because the same thing that's happening when you do that kind of stuff, it's just like Stalin, just before World War II. He was firing, and he wasn't firing, he was executing these people. Because he was afraid that they were smarter than him. Which, i.e., is, they were saying, no, we shouldn't do that. So what ends up happening, he kills him. So when he actually gets into war with Adolf Hitler, he's at a major disadvantage because all the smart commanders that he could have relied on are gone. That's why it takes a strong leader to win the wars. And if you have a weak leader, and Trump might be freaking going off about how tough he is, how smart he is, he's a fucking idiot. And his son, remember, I look at people track. You can see what my father was like by the kind of person that I am, but I'm actually a little bit more outspoken than my father was because my father was very calculating. He's very calculating, and I'm very calculating too. That's why remember I told you that I've been called by my Chinese friends as cunning. That to me is a great compliment. To the Western mind, it'd be like, oh, God, why do they call you cunning? Like cunning like a wolf, cunning like a fox. Damn right. That's what it means. That's why I can do business with the Chinese when it freaks everybody else or other people lose their shirts. Why? Because I know what they do. I know how they play time. They use time. While Americans are so short-minded, it's like, oh, I got to make this deal. I got to make this deal this week. The CEO is screaming at my back. He's freaking saying, get this deal done with the Chinese. The smart guy is like, how long does it take? It's kind of like one of the best things that my dad taught me is that whenever he went in, remember, my dad was the director for Asia Pacific Rim. That was one of the most, for sales and marketing, that was one of the most challenging areas in the world for the Western corporations to go and deal with. My dad was kicking ass there. He took it, like I said, from just a small room in the house to 6 years later, it was the 10th floor in a high rise in the whole floor in a building on Orchard Street in Singapore. That was the base for Kohler International. My dad was dealing with Taiwan. He was dealing with South Korea. He hated Koreans. I love Koreans. Why? Because Koreans are fighters. They're warriors. Well, they used to be. They got emasculated, just like the Americans have been emasculated by the women's movement. It's not for women. It's in order to emasculate the men. Women were just a collateral used in order to create that movement by the Rothschild, the Rothschild, but actively through the Rockefellers. It's very well documented. Now more and more people are sharing it. Aaron Russo was one of the people who was willing to come out and talk about it because he had his friendship with one of the Rockefellers, right? And why was it? It was in order to just get another taxpayer into the system. Remember, OPM, the evil cabal does not use their own money. That's how they get wealthy. That's how the rich get wealthy. They always use everybody else's money. That's how the wealthy were getting wealthy in Silicon Valley. Remember, I was telling you, nothing was being produced. And then soon after that, the dot-com bubble busted. Guess who was smart enough to get the hell out of my frickin' stock options? Yeah. Because I saw it coming. See, that's the thing. It's track record. Look at track records of somebody and see where they are and what they are doing. And this is another thing. If you have all these people, I've had this conversation with Jan. I'll explain to you why Jan is not doing what I'm doing. Jan has told me he will be there to the end. He's going to watch that. To me, that's kind of suicidal. I'm going to be freaking living off the fat of the land, or I should say the fat of the hog. I got a bunch of hog meat down in my freezer because all the hogs I've been raising. And I had a boar that I gave to one of the old homesteader families, and the trade is for the next 3-4 years, we get a couple piglets out of that, and I'll raise it for the summer, and that'll be enough. I'm not going to be in the pig business because the pig business is not good right now, but it will be great for some people who know. Remember I told you about strategic assets as compared to hard assets? Land is a hard asset. Gold, silver is a hard asset. That's stuff you can actually trade. And that's real trade, which is gold and silver. It's going to be real money. People talk, oh, but they're going to push us onto the digital banking stuff. No, the digital banking, yeah, it'll come up there, but just like Catherine Austin Fitts, she said she saw this back in during the Bush administration that they were starting to do that to us. So she knew about this even earlier than I freaking could see it. And we were both dealing with the same administration, except I was doing the dirty work down in Central America, and she was doing the public financial work, which was the other dirty work. That's the one that you're seeing, and you weren't really recognizing what was happening between the Federal Reserve, the Rothschilds, the City of London, the Bank of England. Yes, and the central banks of all Europe. and how they're playing the game, and we're all the little pawns. And I keep on telling you to get a copy of Pawns in the Game. It's in my bio. It's in the description for this episode. That's all I put now. I just put you in my bio, and I put that. I don't even tell you what this show's about anymore. Because it's like, if you're not willing to just check it out and have the time, you don't have the time. You probably don't have time for your own life either. That's sad, because you're going to have to make time. Because if you don't make time to think about this stuff and actively look at it, you're going to be in a bad situation if you're not already in a bad situation right now. And you might be in a bad situation right now because you didn't look at the stuff that was there, was available. I've been giving you information that goes back to 1953. I've been giving you information that goes back to 1910. I've been giving you information that goes back to 1908. So where are all the other people? Our parents and grandparents who should have been paying attention. They got sucked up into the freaking treadmill. The little squirrel treadmill running around in the circle over and over. That's what they did. That's what they put people on. That's how they enslaved us. That's how they got us into 1984. 1984. It's long past 1984 now. We're well into it. We're into the brave new world. Aldous Huxley. And how did Huxley know about all this stuff? He wasn't writing fiction. He wrote it with fiction. You know, kind of like guys who write books about their experiences in the agency, you know, or NSA, or working for DIA and Pentagon. It's like they don't want to get thrown in jail. Me, I don't give a damn anymore. You shouldn't give a damn anymore, because the thing is, they got so many things in the fire going on right now. And that's the reason I say beware and leery of Tucker Carlson. I was trying to understand, what is it about Tucker Carlson? We'll do the whole episode on Tucker Carlson. I'll break down everything about Tucker. But I realized that Tucker is the palatable voice for you to begin accepting things. Because remember, what is it about? What is it about when you see something on a YouTube channel? You look at it, you understand it, you mentally grasp it, and by doing that and not doing anything about it, because you don't do anything about it. You're too busy paying your bills, too busy dealing with your children, too busy dealing with your spouse, too busy wondering about your parents and whether you got to take care of them. Like in the old days, that wasn't even a question, but now people don't even think about taking care of their parents. And that's also because, what have they been doing? Generational warfare. When did the generational warfare begin? Full on, just like with the women's movement. Boom, 1960s. Don't trust anybody over 30. Where did all these sayings come up from? Shit, I'm trying to remember the one that they came up for with women's lib. Oh, women gotta have power. Wow, they didn't have power before then. So they didn't create these families that survived, while now we have no families really surviving because they're all fractionating. And it's forced the children to be raised by the state. Oh yeah, that was the other. Remember, it was the two-pronger? First pronger is to get women putting money into the payment of your security, your prison guards. Yeah, that's what the IRS is all about. It's about paying your security guards and also screwing up the world so that the propaganda can come back and say, hey, we're in danger. Oh my God, we got terrorists. Oh, that's where Sarah Adams and Sean Ryan can't come in, because they're the ones who are trying to make you all afraid. Which, in reality, if you know how to use a gun, you're allowed to carry a gun. And you're in a situation and you know what to do when something like that happens. Oh, by the way, I'm going to start doing like little shorts. So I get really pissed off at stuff. I was watching Pat McNamara, and he's still teaching the bullshit with the magazine change out. Yeah, the drills where the magazine falls on the ground. That's fucking bullshit. That is total bullshit. I get pissed off because quietly these are my friends, like in GRS and agency, at CIA, at NSA, at DIA, at former Green Berets, and it's like, God, is that the shit that they're teaching people? Yeah, they teach that stuff. You know where that came from? That came from SWAT. Because remember, you're the winning force. You're always going to be the winning force. That's the reason guys who are fighting in GWAT, you don't really understand what a civil war really is. Those of us who are in Central America, we understand what a civil war really is. Even guys who are in Vietnam don't really understand what a civil war really is. El Salvador, Nicaragua, those were civil wars. Americans don't understand what that is. Even Vietnam vets don't. GWAT, no. Because remember, Vietnam and GWAT were wars of invasion. That's where Americans went to these other countries and brought troops and basically invaded the country for the military-industrial complex. Central America, we won Central America because we had to keep it a secret. That's why it was labeled the secret war. My father's war was the forgotten war. And I thought that one didn't have the Mick in it. But then if you find out from Prouty that staging for Vietnam and Korea happened at the same time, it's just that Korea got started first because gear was already going. After World War II, that gear had to go somewhere, and it wasn't coming back to States, so it went to Korea, and it went to South Vietnam. Or actually, at that time, it wasn't even South Vietnam yet. It went to Vietnam for the French. But it was staging for when the North was going to get in there. Remember, they had to have the North win and kick the French out, because then you'd have an opportunity for this new war, perpetual war. That's what we're getting into right now. That's what we're in right now in Iran. And this is the worst part about this one that is gunned. The Iran war, this is designed to destroy the United States, not to take over Iran. It's to destroy the United States. Because imagine fighting a Vietnam-style war, but not in Vietnam, fighting it in Laos. Because in terms of topography, that's what Iran is going to be like. And from my experiences in El Salvador, and especially in Nicaragua, imagine you're in the jungles of Nicaragua, in northern Nicaragua, right at the border of Honduras. And it's the rainy season. And you've got your AK-47, and you get contact with the Sandinistas. And you're here with the Contras. And you're exchanging fire. So you're exchanging fire while you're gaining ground, going up a hillside where, because it's the rainy season, you gain a foot, and then you slide down 3, 4, 5 feet in this mud. And you're still taking fire. And you don't know why you're not already dead. And both sides are just laying it on each other. And then you're getting it to the radio, to the RTO, just trying to call in something just to get some cover. But nobody wants to come in here because it's all freaking blacked out. This is what Iran's going to be like. Fighting up and down. It's going to be like Afghanistan, but here's the deal. At least in Afghanistan, they had areas of control. Kandahar, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. This is where the whole country is an enemy country, an enemy state. Where are you going to stage to get in? You land Marines on the beach, they get freaking pummeled. This is going to be like the beach landing in Tarawa in the Pacific for the Marines. Remember, that's why, a little history, why was UDT created? That then became SEALs, or part of it became SEALs. Jesse Ventura, UDT, SEALs. Yeah. It came because the freaking Marines got slaughtered. They got slaughtered because they didn't know what the topography was. The UDT was created to go in there, map it all out, know where everything was, know where all the tank traps were, know where all the freaking coral reefs were, so that the landing craft on low tide would not run a beach hundreds of yards out for an easy killing with a machine gunner on the beach, which is what the Japanese did. They murdered all these freaking Marines out there. Just imagine that's what it's going to be like in Iran. If you have children in the military, I'm praying for you. I'm praying for them. It's a contrived war. It's a contrived war in order to bleed us dry. And when I say bleed us dry, who's paying for this war? It's not Israel. It's U.S. taxpayers and it's U.S. military is going to be paying with blood. And it's going to be sacrificed. Remember, these are the same people. These are not Israelites. These are Canaanites. The Israelites are the Palestinians. Those are the Israelites. The Canaanites, the Edomites, those are the Ashkenazi Jew. These are the people that prayed to Baal. These are the people that prayed to Moloch. Remember the wives? Let's go through a little Israeli history. Real Israeli history. The real. King David and his children who were begot. And before, Solomon. Remember Solomon? King Solomon. And who was the king who had all the wives? And all those wives had their own religions. And he started practicing their religions. So he's not following Yahweh or Jehovah. No, he's following Moloch. He's following Baal. And so what happens? Because God says, you will be smited for not following me. And kaboom! These people were put into exile. Those are the ones going up. The ones who are still believing God, they're the ones who stayed there. They're the ones who've been there for thousands of years. And oh yeah, they're Arabs and Palestinians, genetically DNA. So there you go. So it's all been a lie. It's always been a lie. But the worst part about it is the powerful people, the ones of knowledge, these will be the leaders. These will be the people who know about who their identity really is. These are the Rothschilds. So they use their fellow Ashkenazi Jews because the Rothschilds are Ashkenazi, which is they are Khazarians. They became Khazarians. So they're interbreeding. So the Edomites move north. They go through Turkey. They get into Bulgaria. West of Bulgaria, the Bulgarians are attacking them. The Turks are attacking them. But then they're intermarrying with the Turks who came in from and had been attacked by the Turks. And that becomes, and then they're ruled under Bulan, King Bulan. And then King Bulan is the one that says, we are all going to be now Jews of Judea. But they're really tied to the Canaanites. These are the ones who are the non-believers in God. These are the ones who believe in the devil, the satanics. And the Rothschilds know that. But the PR is to tell everybody that they're the Jews of the Bible. They're not. They have no right to that area. They never had a right. But if you remember, if you keep on telling a lie over and over, the Ashkenazis, and especially the Rothschilds, know this. That's why when they took over the city of London, they took over the city of London in at the end of the Napoleonic War. And they did it by doing the old switcheroo, Wall Street, their Wall Street, stocks, bonds. See, they've been playing this game. And then they got everybody to play their game. But it's like the house when you go to casinos. They never lose because it's all rigged so that the house always wins. That's why Wall Street is a scam. I've been trying to tell you this. Wall Street is a scam to enslave you as a free American. Remember what I told you. The Wall Street was a market. But then August Belmont came in and he turned it into a power play to take over and enslave the United States. And he did. He's done it. It has happened. But then to further enslave the rest of the people who don't play the Wall Street game, that's how they created the Federal Reserve. But they've actually tried various ways of just doing the central bank. But the final central bank is the Federal Reserve, which is just blatantly in your face. Nobody wants to question it. And that's why I've been telling you, please do not pay your prison guards. Go over to Agent for Truth. I just had another talk with a friend. They're going after him for what, $30,000. And I say, this is because you played their game. You need to understand what is legal and what they're doing is not legal. But if you keep on interacting in the way that they want you, you're self-incriminating yourself. That's what it is. It's a game of self-incrimination. Don't self-incriminate yourself with the government. That's how they play the game against you. You have to understand what the game is. And when you understand what the game is, then you know how to play it. Because you're going to have to play it. But are you going to play as someone who's a victim of it? Or are you going to be someone who's going to survive it? And that's all it is now. It's just surviving. So I hear people say, well, some people can't take what you're talking about. And I say, well, you got to stop pussying around. You got to fucking buckle up. You need to buckle up. Can you imagine me getting through freaking prison in Vietnam in 1983 to 1984 if I was being a fucking pussy? Doesn't mean I have to go and beat up people or get into fights with my prison guards. No, it just means do not be broken. Do not be psychologically and emotionally broken. And if you need to pray to your God in order to do it, do it. Find your center. You may find that it's actually the God within you that is speaking through you and enables you to be strong and fight this. Focus on it. Bring it out. Allow it to let you see clearly. And then you won't be freaking sideswiped with people like Erica Kirk and even Charlie Kirk. These were all players. Do you think that Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens are all like saints? They're not saints. They're human beings. Something happens when people have celebrity and wealth and notary. It's like conversation. A mutual friend of Tucker Carlson we're talking about. It's just like, what the fuck is up with Tucker? Which, by the way, my book on the reality TV industry, yeah, shoot, here. This book right here. I sent a copy of this book. When it first came out, I sent it to Tucker Carlson because I had another friend who had his P.O. box. So I sent it directly. I know he received it. That fucker, not even like, hey, thanks for the book. Thanks for the mutual friend for having referred it to me. Nothing. Total silence. Why? Because he can't acknowledge that book. You know why he can't acknowledge that? Because he's part of the system. Remember, I've understood and now I get why Tucker is even doing what he's doing. If you think that he's making all his money off of advertising, you're totally lost. He's making all his money off his patrons, and his patrons are not the patrons that you might have if you have a small channel like me, which is people being kind enough to buy me a coffee through Patreon or through Venmo or through Substack. No, we're talking about the multi-millions that keep on coming. He's part of the club. He's in the club. He went to the Pilgrims meetings. That's the club. Yeah, which God, he's on the roster. He and his father were at dinner. You don't get invited to this dinner unless you are in with the powers that be. So let's just type in Pilgrims. You can do this too. Pilgrims, Tucker Carlson. Who comes up? Boop. Pilgrims, London. Yeah, there we go, London. Pilgrim Society. Yeah. And somebody wrote an article. Came out in 2024. What's the title? Read that right there. Yeah, can you read that? It says Tucker Carlson, Pilgrims. So Pilgrim Society, scumbag and traitor to America. Yeah. He is the buffer. When they want something to come in, remember what I said, it's all about making you comfortable with it. Once you accept it and you don't do anything about it, what was that? If you're okay with being locked up in your house and avoiding people 6 feet away for a bullshit reason, you're complicit. You are saying it's okay. If you hear stuff that Tucker Carlson's talking about and you get pissed off for a little bit and then you let it ride, you're complicit. Our ancestors, which, by the way, if you're watching Outlander, I'm getting really excited. They're coming to the Battle of Kings Mountain. David Graham and Andrew Graham were at that battle. So a little bit of family history. I'm getting excited about it. And maybe your family was in the American Revolution too, which is actually the first British Civil War in the Americas. And this one that's coming up, it might be the next one. Yes, because we're having to have the same revolution again. Because I guess it wasn't made clear in the last one that we do not want their control of our country in the same way that being able to control the rest of the world. Because they found out, how do you do it? You don't have to do it militarily. You just got to get their bank in. Once they get their bank control in, they own us. It's just like Amschel Bauer, the founder of the Rothschild dynasty. He says, it matters not to me who the armies and the soldiers are. It's if I own the money, if I own the bank. That's what it comes down to. If they own the money, they don't care who the military is because they own all of it. And they set us against each other, killing each other for them to profit. What's the best business in the world? Catherine Austin Fitts said it. Yeah, she's right. The business of death, where you can profit off death. And how have they been profiting off death in the last 20 years in a horrific manner? Our food, our, quote, medicine, our education, and by the way, also wars. Yeah. But wars are costly. It takes a lot of expenditure, and they got to get that money together, even though it's OPM, right? It's other people's money. So, get ready, people. People survived other wars. People survive the other calamities. The question is whether your genetic line is going to pass on this. And if you think it in that manner, the way I think in this manner, then you're going to be good. Because you will be thinking, what can I do? Remember, if you're asking, quote, your God self, your higher self, your clear thinking brain, your subconscious is able to think ahead of your subconscious brain is able to think ahead of your conscious brain, you're going to be ahead of the game. And that's what will get you across. But you have to ask the questions. It's like one of the things I'll be talking about on how to learn a language. It's one thing to read about things. It's one thing to see Tucker Carlson telling you things. It's one thing to see stuff on Sean Ryan shows. It's one thing to hear me talk. It's one thing to hear Jan telling you, we're both telling you, it's a population thinning. They want to thin the population. They realize they have too many slaves. They can't have too many slaves because they can't control that many slaves. They don't have the infrastructure in order to control it. And they're freaking out right now. That's why they've had people like me sneaking through. But I don't have a big enough audience. Even Jan doesn't have a big enough audience. Even Catherine Austin Fitz doesn't have a big enough audience. Man, my turkeys are just fighting each other. That's what happens when the sun comes in. Even though there's still ice and snow on the ground, the turkeys are already getting ready to freaking pop out eggs. Let's get back to this question because I wanted to answer. So a couple questions. How many languages is that going to... Oh, yeah. So this whole thing I talked about, yeah, they've infiltrated. They're going to start recruiting these illegals who've been brought in. Remember, their intention was not to become Americans. Their intention was to come and get what they were promised by the Biden administration. It's all been a plan. The Trump administration is a plan. The Biden administration is a plan. You want to look at a comparison? Why I am pissed off at Tucker, because if Tucker was actually on our side, my friend who was on his show when he was still at Fox, we're talking Fox, if he didn't just get 15 minutes and he got the full hour that he should have gotten, because of all the information my friend had given to him about the Hunter Biden laptop, maybe there would have been a shakeup in the country, in the world, but it didn't happen. In the same way that the Epstein files. So, the Epstein files for the Republican Party is the same as the Hunter Biden laptop for the Democrat Party. That's all it is. It's another charade. It's another play for us all to get all whipped up as we sit in the theaters going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. It's playing on your energies that they can sap out. They're sapping out this anger, this rage, all this kind of stuff. When I'm done with this and I'm off trying to get my emotion to really get you to start thinking about stuff in a proper way so that you can then take it and realize that I'm also telling you, breathe in, focus. Think like a sniper. You got your cheek willed. You got it on, and you're looking through your scope, and you got to be calm. You got to relax. You open your eyes. You see your crosshairs. Did you know when I was in the war, after I went through sniper training, it might be a little psychotic, but when I would talk to people and I would look at people, I would actually imagine a crosshair on everybody. That's how you train your eye. So I'm giving you a little training when I used to train people in long range and taking people out with scoped rifles. You imagine a crosshair. So you take a look at your crosshair, you close it, and you're now imprinting it in your mind. So then you bring it up whenever you're looking at people. And you imagine that crosshair going right here. The 3x5 box, we call it. I call it the key box right here. Because you know, when you hit that stem, boom, it's all over, lights out. And you start looking at people in that way. It's a training. You're focusing on something. You're in a situation right now where you've got to be able to breathe in the same way, but focus. Well, your focus is how am I going to get through this? That's what will get you through this. In the same way, how was I going to get through prison when I was in Vietnam? How was I going to get through Central America? Remember I told you that I was writing in my diary that I'm going to grow my hair long and move to Alaska. No, I was going to go to Alaska and grow my hair long. This was back in it was all through. The last 3 years in Central America for me, all I was thinking about was just getting through alive and getting to Alaska. And thank God I did. It was the best choice. That's where I wrote the first draft of Bamboo Chest. But I had that in my mind, and that's how I got through. I was going to do my job, fight for this country, end communism in Latin America. Well, we did militarily, but we didn't do it politically. because they just voted it in. But see, that's the thing. They learned, just like with the bankers, they realized you don't have to take over militarily a country. All you got to do is invest. You invest in the country and you own the country. That's the thing about it. Where did the money come in? Where were the VCs? Who are the VCs, the initial VCs, who profited all the other VCs who started coming in after? Remember, it's like Wall Street. It's the first guys who invest in a project and then create all this drama and all this PR around it to get other VCs in. And once the other VCs get in, then the initial investment is already paid and pulled back out. And now it's all profit. Sick and twisted. And it's done wonders for the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and the Fords and all these foundations that have been just be good people to the citizens instead of taking your education and reprogramming you to be workers and slaves instead of free thinkers and real Americans, which we haven't been in this country since what? They started taking over in 1910, 100%. That's when they restructured all the education system. You know, Jan's talking about, he comes from he's a former Green Beret. I'm a former paramilitary officer. I'm a former Marine officer candidate. I was going to go and freaking drop bombs on people with an F-18. We're warriors. This is what we do. We understand the killing. I was raised in Vietnam as a kid during the Tet Offensive. I saw the war. I had my tonsils taken out of the Army hospital. I saw the effects of that war. That's where the psychology comes in. See, it's not the actually killing the enemy. It's losing your buddies and hearing them scream and hearing the civilians as they're also being butchered. And actually, it's the civilians in more modern wars that actually get killed. Because the guys who are doing the fighting, we're pretty good about staying away from things that kill us, at the same time trying to kill the other guys. That's why you get only 58,000 killed in Vietnam for servicemen, for U.S. service. But then how many millions of Vietnamese were killed in Vietnam? Civilians? Think about that. So that brings me back to the book from Jane Hayden. How many languages is that going to take? So we talked about how many languages. It's going to be a lot of language, but they're all going to have to learn English in order to be in the military, even if it's minuscule. The question is, while they're being indoctrinated into the U.S. military, will they be like the Hessians, easily told by the military, go and shoot these people in the streets? Just like the Redcoats did at the Boston Massacre, right? And then if I can ask you, so I'll read this. So how many languages is that going to take? I started reading your book again. That's The Bamboo Chest. Missed some good parts. If I can ask a couple questions. I got teared up in a few places over Bunny especially. You were so real in your book. Was that part of PTSD healing? Oh, absolutely. That's why I write books. That's why it's hard for me to write this book about Central America. It's the hardest one. That's why it's taken this long. The top secret, the idea that I can write about this, 20 years, that's a 20-year delay. You can't write about that. And then there's other stuff you can't write about forever. You know, like the Kennedy assassination. Yeah. You got to wonder. Waiting for all those people to die. Yeah. Who were part of it. And then, did you ever get to punch Richard Knight? So Richard Knight, because of the letter? Yeah. The letter. How did you pick all the quotes at the beginning of the chapters? That's easy. I've just heard these things and I go and look for ones that actually fit each chapter. And they do fit each chapter. Because I've either read them, I remember them, because I'm well read, just like Jan. We read, but the difference between Jan and I and most of others who are talking on this channel is we do. If Jan had the same thinking as me, he'd be living either in South America or Australia or New Zealand, building his own homestead. But he wants to go out in a big blaze of glory. I'm way past that. I've done that. Don't need to do it. So he's going to keep on. He wants to watch it till the end. Me? I'm in a place that when all the shit gets down, even if it's a nuclear war where they lift up the material and they turn the whole central band between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn into a nuclear winter and basically kill everybody through starvation. We'll be fine up here in Alaska and north of Vancouver, Canada. And also, that's why all the Israelis are going over for the new Palestine under the Plan Andina, which all the Argentines who are very aware and paying attention to that are really pissed off, is the taking over Patagonia That's why they've been blaming, like they were blaming the Palestinians for terrorist attacks, but it was basically Ben Gurion and the terrorist paramilitary group in Palestine in 47 and 48, 49. Yeah, and everybody thinks that group was like disbanded. That group just got sent into Mossad, right? That's how it works. Okay, you put a lot into your videos, helping and teaching. You're a historian magna cum laude. I don't know how I found your page, but I've learned a lot and am very grateful. God bless you and your family and your homestead. Lord, keep them safe, wise, and at peace. And thank you, and God bless, Jane. So more questions. Going back to Knight. Yeah, no, I didn't get to, but, he did die of alcoholism in a hospital quietly. After trying to get more and more money out of people to try and go back there to do his treasure hunt. Yeah. But I thank him because I found out what happened in the American MIAs, which is a sad story in itself. Okay. Got teared up, so you're surreal. So the PTSD healing, that's why the subtitle of that book, the title is The Bamboo Chest, but the subtitle is An Adventure in Healing the Trauma of War. And I wrote that for combat veterans. Even though the main part of the story, even though in the epilogue I write about my combat experience in Central America, but it's really to show that I understood already from my prison experience and being in solitary that I was able to heal my PTS from having lived in Saigon during some of the worst parts of the Vietnam War, especially in cities like with the Tet Offensive and the May Offensive. Both of them happened in 1968, and then all the other offensives that were happening during that time between 1968, Tet, and 1972. When we left. So, blah, 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 blah. I think I've answered all those, and I've answered the other question from Missouri 82, which is Trump a bad guy? Well, look at a person's actions, what they do. That's why I asked myself, I'm telling you to get into the country. Am I still living in the city? I see these people, like I listen to freaking Mike Ferris. He's listening to all these people tell him, get out. You can't be living where... He had that guy who's up in Canada. Oh, I'm going to be talking about that guy. He's done really well selling snake oil because he's living on a mountain. Look at what people are doing. I live in a valley. I live by a river. Is it colder because I'm by the river? Yes, it is. But when we can't get water, I can walk to the river. When we can't go and do our subsistence fishing down at the ocean, I can still get salmon out of the river. I can still get trout out of the river. I can still get Dolly Varden out of the river. So I'm in a place which is sustainable. Living on a mountain in southern Canada, which basically, when I look at that territory, I look at it, boom, I'm saying, here's a poser. Here's another poser on YouTube. I got a situation right now where I just realized this channel, Homesteady. Go check it out, Homesteady. I'm getting ready to talk about them. I just realized they're in the neighborhood. And he tries to make it look like, ooh, we're in the wilds of Alaska. He wants to do the real wilds of Alaska. He should go to where I was a newbie gold miner up in the interior, where we get dropped off by a bush plane on floats in a lake. Then we have to walk for 5 miles while our gear is being pulled on an ATV over these tussocks. That all it does is just shake up your kidneys and your liver, and you're just like, oh my God. That's what real interior and living in the wilds of Alaska is. Not what Homesteady's doing, where he doesn't even, he's had a channel. He and his wife have had this channel for how many years back in Pennsylvania? Which you realize he's just another Trustafarian coming to Alaska. And who were the first Trustafarians on TV? Oh, the Kilchers. I knew Ewell Kilcher. That's the one they always talk about, the patriarch. Dead. Yeah, I knew him. The stories. I wrote about him in this book. He was notorious. Ewell. Whenever some young, hot babe came to Homer, Alaska, he was notorious to show up at the front door. This was after his wife had left him and gone off down to Arizona with one of the daughters. And thank God she went with him because she then became a Marine. Fantastic. Semper Fi. Probably saved her. But that family has always had a reputation in Homer. In high school, they were known as the guys that you went and bought pot from. The other one was, if you were missing something, you always wondered if the Kilchers had come by and visited. That was the reputation. That is kind of still the reputation. It's kind of like Otto. Otto fucking makes the moves on my significant other, and he's married to Charlotte. His word to my significant other. This is after we were invited by Shane, who Shane is like one of the best of the Kilchers. And Otts is because he's done a lot of work. And actually, last time I saw Otts, he kind of like gives me a lead because he realized that I wrote this book. He said, yeah, dude, you better start looking for another job. I don't think how much longer freaking Alaska Last Frontier is going to last. Because I'm basically fed up with the bullshit of fucking reality TV. Because the idea that Discovery Channel is dumbing down people, making them look, that's the way you live up here. Nobody has lived like that interpretation in Alaska since basically the 50s, the 1950s. There's been so much free money in this state that it's turned us into a socialist state when we used to be a great state, when we actually were allowed to exploit our resources. And actually, it continues the cycle. So now we have issues where we're not allowed to have fires burn the way we had before. We're not allowed to log in the way we were allowed to before. And what's suffered are the deer populations, the moose population. At the same time, people are trying to, quote, live off the land and go kill some moose. I'm going to get really pissed if the homesteady guys who've just been in here for barely a year are going to use residential hunting rights to shoot a moose. And if he shoots an illegal moose, which is pretty damn easy in this area because those regulations are so screwed up, it should be actually any bull moose for a resident because we shoot our moose not for the trophy, we shoot our moose for food. And actually, we don't want to shoot the big ones. Actually, it should be set up, you're not allowed to shoot anything over 60. You're not allowed to shoot anything with 3 brow tines and above. If you did that, we'd actually retain the genetics. Instead of that genetics being slowly, repeatedly after years. It's been going on for 40 years. Shoot, is it 40 years? No, it's like almost 50 years now that they've selectively been pulling out a genetic line. You do that enough times, just like with our masculine men. What have they been doing to us? Just like with the moose, you selectively take out, it starts disappearing. And the same thing, you start taking out the masculine men in a society, what do you get? You get these soft men right now. Like I made comment about Tucker and Dave Smith. They're all bitching about this stuff, but they're not doing anything about it. Do you think that Tucker Carlson works his own land? I gotta turn off that my sensor. Just a sec. The chickens are running on the deck. I always forget to turn off the sensors. Remember, on your property, you should have motion sensors. Tell you where somebody is or something is. And you got cameras. You're able to check that out. What are you going to do when the power goes out? Oh, there are other ways to set up sensors. Then we go old school. Like tripwires and flares. But anyway, let's get back on. So the whole idea, that's what they've been doing. They create these wars that profit them through the business of death and also removes the masculine men. Because who's going to go to the war? The masculine men are going to go fight the war. And that's a sad thing, using propaganda and lies in order to get them to go and sacrifice them. Oh, and then also, by doing that, just like that female rabbi was talking about, that's how they're doing this. They're still giving their offerings of sacrifice. Yeah, but it's not the chosen people that are being sacrificed. It's we goyim, the slaves. That's who's being sacrificed. So they're benefiting by thinning up the population that would finally get, wait a minute, why are we doing this? Because we're not benefiting from this. We're actually creating more danger in the world by doing this. We're creating more strife in the world. We're removing peace in the world. We are not getting into wars to win them anymore. We're getting into wars in order for these scumbags to profit from them through Wall Street and investment in all these different military industrial complex businesses. And that can be anything. It can be as common as textiles. That's still part of the MIC. Think about it. If they're making uniforms, if they're making web gear, if they're making kit, any type of kit, medical supplies, it's the military industrial complex. That's where they're profiting. And they're doing it by sacrificing your children. And they do that. Why do you think they go after the children? Because the children have already been indoctrinated. Oh, Americans got to go out and defend the country, the world. We got to go out and fix the world. No, we don't. That's totally contrary to what the U.S. Constitution states. We're supposed to defend the United States. The military is supposed to defend the citizens and the territories of the United States. That's it. Doesn't mean going into other countries. So, we got to preemptively. No, that's bullshit. Because that's the same thing that was talked about. We do not get into foreign intrigues. This is what happens when your history is hijacked and your philosophies are hijacked by a death cult whose objective is to wipe out your masculine men and enslave your women and sacrifice your children to Baal, their god, to Moloch. That's what's all been about. Nothing has changed for thousands of years. The only thing that's changed is the technology with which they're able to do it. So get clear-headed, people. This is the only way you're going to get through this. It sounds depressing, all the stuff that I'm telling you. What's really happening is you've been in la-la land. You've been thinking your government's there to protect you. Your government is there to freaking finish you off and enslave you. That's all it's been about. It's to keep you in line. And the reason you know that is they've been breaking the codes and the laws that have been set in the Constitution year after year after year. The last one they're going to try and get is to disarm you. When they finally disarm you, as they're trying to do in Canada right now, and I'm praying for the Canadians, please do not break ranks. Stay together. You're at 98% and you're not going to turn in your ARs and your AKs. Do not turn them in. If you turn them in, you will be slaves like the Aussies and the Kiwis. And I have my assets. I've got a really good asset on the South Island. And we were talking about, because he's old enough. He's in his 70s. And I'm not going to talk any further about it because I don't want to endanger him. We're having a conversation. And he brought up, things have changed so much. I mean, it's just gotten so bad. And he says, I used to have a beautiful AR-15. And it was just like, wow, I didn't remember that part. But they had AR-15s in New Zealand. In New Zealand. And then they were all required to turn them in to sell them. Bring them in for monetary compensation. That's how disgusting they play this game. And it's all for the safety of the people. It's never for the safety of the people. It's just like the bullshit about freaking, they've got this new ad here in Alaska. Conversations you got to have to ask, like when you go over to a party. And is it going to be meat or vegan? Or are you going to have a barbecue? Is there a pool there? And then are the weapons, do you have firearms in the house and are they locked? Well, you know what? When I was a kid, we not only had loaded weapons all throughout the house, but my dad never owned a gun safe. Never owned a gun safe. I never killed my brother. There was that one time, because we were always told, don't go in and touch any of the weapons. We had the gun conversation. The gun conversation is do not grab these, do not show these to your friends, do not come here and play with your friends. We never did that. But my brother and I were really curious, and we went in there to check it out. And thank God it wasn't the gun. My mom had one of these tear gas pens. They used to make them back in the 60s. My mom had this all the way since Saigon. This was for protection in case she needed it. Because remember, my father, even though he was an asset for the agency, he had all these government, because I found these ID cards, when I found these, this is someone who could easily have gotten requisition a weapon. He was a former Marine. According to his card, he was actually, if he was taken prisoner by the North, by the Vietnamese, he was supposed to be afforded the rank of a captain in the U.S. Army. That's how the ID cards work, right? It's kind of like my ID card that I had in Central America. It was to show that I was with the press, right? But it was from COPREFA. COPREFA was the government's military. It was the military PR. Guess who also had that same exact card? Yeah, Eugene Hassenfuss, who just died just a few months ago. Yeah, the guy who actually survived the parachuting down. It was a boxcar, a C-123, I think it was. He got shot out of, or they got shot with a SAM. He was the guy that was like taken by the Sandinistas, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, he had the same card because he was flying out of Ilopango. I was based out of Ilopango. Yeah. That's how this is the game. This is all a game. And the thing about it is, do you play as a winner or do you play as a loser? The losers are being emotionally distraught and played all over. You need to find your center. If it's through God, is it through meditation? Is it through Buddha? Is it through fucking Muhammad? I don't care. What I do care is that you get straight and you get squared away. Because we're not going to do this alone. This is not going to happen alone. Survival. That's what I'm talking about. We're just talking survival. After that, then it's clearing house. I'm happy to go do that after. I'm very happy to go and do that after. If I live long enough and I have the physical wherewith. I read a lot about like Samuel Whitmore. Do you remember Samuel Whitmore? Yeah, he was bayoneted, shot twice. No, he was shot a bunch of times. He was bayoneted twice, left for dead. He was 80 years old. He was a former officer in the British military in the French and Indian Wars. He's kind of like, the Mel Gibson role in The Patriot, right? Well, he gets up. This is a real guy. Famous. Google Samuel. Well, I'll put a link. Again, I put all my links and all the important information in the first pinned comment for each episode. So you'll have another one right there. Read up on Samuel Whitmore. Amazing guy. Every Green Beret, every freaking special ops guy, every freaking Navy SEAL, you should aspire to be like Samuel Whitmore. A guy to the very end knew what was right, knew what was wrong, and he fought against what was wrong. And he survived after the war. I think he survived until he was like 97, 98. With all the wounds that he had. We'll talk about wounds and what happens. Like my 2 TBIs, one from a mortar, one from a friendly fire bomb. It was called in Danger Close. My knee that was almost ripped off when the mortar gave me the TBI and almost ripped off my knee. It killed one of the guys with me at the corner. This was at 3rd Brigade in San Miguel when the base was overrun in 86. Yeah. All these things you get in your 20s, they're going to hit you as you get older. You got to learn how to do it. As a matter of fact, I'm going to give you a link. This might help you. I am now on that 10-in-1 mushroom mix. I'm telling you, that is the cat's meow. It helps with attitude. It helps with focus. It helps with body pains. I do that with my noromectin. Maybe we'll talk about it. That'll probably get me banned. Because I can't talk about it like medical, even though I have a very strong medical background. Combat experience medical background, by the way. But that's how fucked up this world is right now. That somebody recommends something that's been proven. That actually I learned from a surgeon who he takes noromectin for body pain and for not getting sick. He hasn't gotten sick in 4 years. No flus, no cold, nothing. That's wild. So what is it? If this is in order to kill parasites. But the Japanese call this product, and the Chinese, I remember I gave you the name for it. It's the God medicine. They call it in China. They call it the God medicine, and you can get it over the counter. Here, you got to get a prescription, unless you get the pet issue. So I get the livestock stuff, and guess what? Just like with the antibiotics, it's the same damn thing. Oh my God, is that going to get me banned? Let's see how long this one lasts. I'm just so fed up with the bullshit. This is where the pharmaceutical companies are raping you while killing you. That's fucking disgusting. But that's what they're doing. They're doing it to everybody. But isn't that part of like what Epstein was doing? He was like having sex with dead bodies. Oh, did you miss that in the Epstein files? It's there. These are evil people. These are demons. These are true demons. These are demons on earth. And they're the ones who have money. And they're the ones who are using that money against. But the key, though, is to understand what is money. Money is, como en español, nosotros hablamos de es confianza. It's trust. If you have trust, and that's what they've done. They've built this trust on a lie. If you understand what money is, what real money is, and you understand what money is supposed to represent, then you understand why is it that people who seemingly don't have any money whatsoever have so much wealth visually. It's kind of like I was just watching a movie about, was it The White Hunter, Black Death? It's the one with Clint Eastwood. It's on YouTube. It was an old movie. He plays John Huston. Clint Eastwood does. And you see him. He's totally in debt. But he's living in a freaking palace in England. How is this guy doing it? That's the illusion of money. That's why, if you were to look at Rothschilds on paper, they look like paupers. They're paupers. But they live in palaces. And they have titles. We'll be talking about titles. Like PhDs, which really mean piled higher and deeper. You know? Or like general. Like I would trust an NCO. A high-ranking NCO. Long before I would trust a general. Why? Because once you become a flag officer, 9 times out of 10. See, I won't throw them all in the ditch. Because there are a lot of people who are leaving because they're so disgusted. There was a general in the Air Force who was not willing to be part of the assassination of John F. Kennedy that Colonel Prouty talks about in one of his interviews. Who would come to him and say, I cannot abide by this. And he wrote up his letter of resignation and he left just before Kennedy was killed. So, think about that. That's the deep state. Kennedy was killed by the deep state. This is in the 60s. How long ago is that? How much more developed do you think everything's become? Why do you think Peter Thiel is where he is? Why do you think Alex Karp is where he is? These are fucking psycho nerds. Do you think they're really that smart? These are actors. They play a role. Alex Karp is supposed to play the psycho nerd. Peter Thiel is supposed to play the meth head psycho faggot. That's what he's supposed to play that. Who's supposed to be so intelligent. These people make their money by who they know and how they freaking blow somebody off. And I don't mean blow them off. I mean blow them. Yeah, especially like Peter Thiel. How do you think he got his way up? That's how these guys play these games. In the same way that they do blackmail, sex blackmail, honeypots and all that kind of stuff. They do it amongst each other. It's like they're greeting to each other. That's how sick these people are. And they think it's normal. And for those of us who actually live in the light and who actually think of us as having a connection to a higher God, to a God, true God, a light God, we find this disgusting. And we have to watch it because we have to not go into that darkness, which is there's a kind of anger in that darkness. And that's how they feed into us. One of these days I'll tell you about how I did channeling. I actually when I talk about all this stuff like channeling and spirit guides and higher selves and connecting with God, the light, when I went on the Red Road, you know, the Native American church, the peyote, all that kind of stuff. That's why when Sean Ryan's talking, oh my God, I had this experience. I was having ayahuasca down in freaking South America. Yeah, man, you just got an opportunity to get stoned again. Just like when you were in high school and you were a pot smoker and you're a fucking loser. You're still the same fucking loser, it's just you got more money. You're the same guy. You've never had any development. And you've got kids now, man. You should be thinking about that. Come on, Sean. Palm. Come on. For your kids. Fucking come clean. Come clean, dude. You just got to come clean. Get smart. If you want to make your dad proud of you, come clean. That's the best thing you can do. On that note, I hope I've answered your questions, Jane. If you'd like to treat me to a coffee, Venmo, you can do $10. I think I'll make the coffee myself. I won't go down to Starbucks or go into town in Homer. Because Homer's a ways for me to go. I haven't been to Homer in 3 months. Oh, shoot. I was going to give you a walk. Let's go for a walk. I'm going to take you into the stove corner. And we'll talk about what hopefully I told you about last. Go buy your stuff. Go get ready. Oil products. But also some other things you might be thinking about. I think you'll like this. Here. Let's switcheroo. So, what did I pick up yesterday when I did a run over to Soldotna? So 1, 2, 3. So I got 5 tubs. You know how much these tubs were? These tubs were $4 each. I kid you not. So I got 4 tubs. Why? These are made with
oil products. I also went and picked up some more. I already got blueberries and raspberry outside, but I'm still trying to push the blackberries. The blackberries are right here. Yep. And blueberries and grapes. We've got Edelweiss, which do well up here. We've got King of the North, which is a dark grape. And then the blueberries over there, Patriots, Patriot blueberries, Blue Crop. Those are all in Zone 4. We're actually in Zone 5 and Blu-ray. So I always go for another zone higher. That's Spicard, I think that is. What is that? And then, hey, jalapeno's still going strong inside. We'll have another crop coming in. And then what is that? Oh, those are those super blackberries. We'll see how they go. And then we got seeds coming in. I got some Chinese chrysanthemum growing right there. So those will go into a bigger pot pretty soon. Still waiting for my Korean perilla or Japanese shiso will be coming up. And again, we got that on there. There's the stove, the rizzoli. That's the rizzoli that we're going to put in. It's been in storage for like 2 years. See, we bought these things. We've been looking at this. This is the thing. You can't just pop in and do your turnkey. Oh, and here we got, what are those? Those are those, not maggots, mealworms. So we got mealworms growing. So those go to feed the chickens in the winter when we need them. But also the pupae make great trout bait, by the way, if you put them under a float and cast it out in the lake. But here, the rizzoli, stone, that'll go in the center of the living room. Not the center of the living room, but the wall up against the kitchen. I don't want it in this corner right here. I want to keep this corner open because it will turn this more into a greenhouse area. And that's that. So hopefully that's helpful. You're looking at that, get an idea that I'm picking up. So there's the oil products. Those are the plastic tubs. What I also got is I got more motor oil for the vehicles. I got a bunch. I got like 12, God, what is it? I forget the size, but the small bottles. It's enough for a 5-gallon tank of chainsaw fuel for mix for a 2-stroke. I got they're $1 each at Walmart. So you'll look at the deals, check and see what the deals are, and just, you got to start stacking, people. You got to start stacking this stuff. Even if you got no room. I mean, the freaking living room looks like a warehouse right now because I'm getting ready to build another freaking storage shed. And once that stuff that can be outside in the cold throughout the winter, it'll go there. We've got a sawmill, getting ready to put up the sawmill up for the summer and be able to cut our own lumber. Thinking ahead. We got the sawmill from Woodland Mills over in Canada. Freaking, what, it's 4 years now? That's how long it takes. You need to think of the long run. We didn't just pop up here. I didn't just pop up here. My significant other, we met here in Alaska. I had to leave my significant other back in San Francisco. She did not want to come up. Sad to say. But you know what? We would have been living in Montana. Because the point I wanted to move to Montana, because shoot, I've got a great uncle who's buried in the cemetery over there in Fort Shaw. I don't want to live in Fort Shaw. But, you know, north of Bozeman, over towards what is it? Flathead, up in the Flathead area. But look what happened. Hollywood's gone up there. That's what's happening. You're getting these migrations, and they're destroying the local culture because they don't fit in, and the people who are there see all this money coming in, and they get drawn to it like they think it's a light. But you know what? It's not a light. It's kind of like a blue light for a mosquito. It draws you in order to kill you. And it draws them in to the Hollywood light, and then it just kills the society that was there, that was actually been built over generation after generation after generation, which fits in that area. That's the biggest problem right here. That's actually why I get pissed off with all these fake YouTube channels that come up here. Either whether it's the Trustafarian Kilchers who are creating this fakery, as they did on the reality fake show, about what it's like. You know, that whole thing about like he had to kill the bear. No, Otts Lee had to kill the bear because if he didn't kill the bear, they would starve to death that winter. Oh, because they couldn't make the 5-minute drive from the Kilcher homestead down East End Road over to fucking McDonald's.
and get a fucking Big Mac? Yeah, people. That's the whole fucking lie I've been talking about. That's why I get really pissed off, because more and more people come up to Alaska thinking they're going to get that. And now we got this homesteady guy from freaking Pennsylvania, where he was a trustafarian on his wife's parents' farm that nobody was working. He said, oh, this is an idea for us to make a show. And that's what really pisses me off. See, when I do 5 acres and a moose, and I'm getting ready to do more on that because it's time for me to start talking straight with people and say, all this shit that you're seeing on the YouTube channels is bullshit. Like Simple Living Alaska. Simple Living Alaska. Wow, that's real simple living when you just built a Quonset hut that's priced about 80, 90,000 on the cheap. Probably about 120,000 just to build a shed that you're then going to do underwater heating. Instead of like what a real Alaskans do, we just put in a wood stove. Like, I'm heating this whole house. What did I say it was? 1,800 square feet. It's 2 stories. I mean, it's a big house. It's a bigger house than I want. Like when I build a log home, that's going to be a 25 by 25 foot floor plan, 2 stories with a loft. And I'm going to build that for under 30,000. How am I going to do that? You should go over and subscribe to me over at 5 Acres and a Moose. There'll be a link to one of my episodes at the end of this episode. Go over and sign up over there. I'm going to start talking about it and why all these trustafarian YouTube channels coming up here. They come up here. They're not going to live here. And you can tell because they've not actually acclimated. And it's based on how many times they run down to Costco in Anchorage. There's a bunch of people up in Wasilla. And they're going to their... instead of going and hunting the moose and growing all the things that they need and canning all those things and making that good, they're running down to go and buy lamb. Hey, I enjoy it too, but I'm not lying to you saying I'm totally off grid. And then you see like Homesteady, he's off grid. He's only off grid because he wants to be off grid. There's a power line right next to his property. And more I look at that as, you know what, I have a pretty good idea where that property is. Just because of the layout of the land. See, when you live long enough in an area, you know by where people are. There's this other one with it north to Alaska. That's another one. All these YouTube channels are coming up to Alaska, not because they want to live in Alaska, like I did. I came back to Alaska. But this was the thing. When I first lived here in Alaska, I don't hear this anymore, which is kind of wild. When I lived in Alaska, everybody was telling me, don't tell them how good it is up here. That was the Alaskan rule that was broken by the Kilchers. And it was in a really bad way because they made it look like, oh, you can live off the land up here. You can't live off the land up here. That's why 90% of Alaskans live off imports. That should terrify Alaskans because the majority of those Alaskans are not prepared like we are. As I've said, I knew what Alaska was like. I came back with the understanding of what Alaska had become. And I prepare for what Alaska will be when we don't have imports again. These other people are continuing to do the Alaska imports. That's why they're constantly running to Costco. Costco for us is like once or twice a year in Anchorage. If you may have noticed on these channels, these homesteader channels, Alaska homesteader land channels, it's like just about every 2 weeks they run into Anchorage. That's not homesteading, people. Homesteading means that you have a homestead that's self-supporting and feeds you. And it heats you. Like, if I had to, and I will have to because I have to thin out. I have now too many trees, and it's blocking area that I like to have as pasture. And also, it's blocking the moose coming onto my property so I can be guaranteed of getting a moose every time I try to shoot one, which is every 4 years. Because it takes about that long for 2 people to get through one moose. You know, with all the other stuff we have. Like we have pork, and we have salmon that we catch under subsistence. We have grouse that I'll go and hunt every once in a while. I don't like to shoot the grouse because everybody else is killing them all. Because there's so many people who've moved in the area. Oh, and that's the other thing too. And when you're watching Homesteady, go watch it. You'll notice it's like he doesn't want you to see outside the vehicle. He doesn't want to see too far off the property because you might realize there's a dozen other homesteaders around his remote off-grid property. And when he films, Like, if you ever go with a ride with me, I'll probably take you for a ride with me in my truck. We'll just go down the highway. And you'll see freaking cars just flying back and forth on Old Sterling. That's the same road he's been going on. I know, because every once in a while he'll pop above, and then he'll make it look like there's nobody on that road. But, and then he quickly edits that out, because boom, right after another, there's another vehicle coming in. That's how fucked up these channels are. They're creating this illusion. So now he's trying to create this illusion that Alaska is like this remote area. He's on the Kenai Peninsula. He lives within 30 miles of where our homestead is. God. And people eat it up. And why do they eat it up? For the same reason people don't want to hear what I'm saying. They don't want to deal with reality. And if that's the case, ask yourself, why is the majority of YouTube being used against you? It's being used as part of the whole bread and circuses campaign, which is to keep you at home, keep you from getting a little uppity. Remember, we talked about it in my slavery plantation people, right? We're all on the plantation, and they don't want us getting uppity, because when we get uppity, then, people get put on the guillotine and they start hanging from ropes, because the citizens don't like being used. They don't like their constitution being stolen from them when honorable people fought for them. And you listen to Candace, and she talks about the Masons. My dad was a Mason. I told you he was a member of the Lincoln chapter down in frickin' Venezuela. That's how he got into the Masons. Frickin', I saw his old pin and everything. Good people can be. So that brings the question of, like, Trump, is Trump a good guy? Well, good people have bad in them, and bad people have good in them. That's the reason, if you actually listen to the whole speeches from Adolf Hitler, it doesn't have him just yelling and screaming like in the propaganda movies against him in the World War II movies. No, he's talking friendly, and he's bringing everybody in because he was a great orator. He talked smoothly, and he talked about beautiful Germany. And we'll remember what it was like when we were children. Kind of scary if you think about what MAGA was all about. It's like, do you remember what it was like when we were kids in the 60s and the 70s? Because we just want to make America great again. Well, my memories of frickin' the 60s is frickin' people getting shot in the streets of Saigon. So, which is it? Is he a good guy or is he a bad guy? You'll realize that he's just another person, but most importantly is he's owned. And he's not owned in your favor, because he's now part of the game, just in the way that Candace is part of the game. She is talking about Masons and how evil, and that the founding of this country was on these evil people. So she's saying that, so if you use that definition, then George Washington was an evil man, and so was Thomas Jefferson was an evil man, because they had slaves. George Washington had slaves. Thomas Jefferson had slaves, and these were founding fathers of this country. Think about this. The question is, where are we in the present, and where would you like to be in the future? So hopefully my little share in the corner with you, showing you the stove. If you can get a freaking wood stove, I would go get one. There's a lot of available, and used ones, the older ones. If I could find one that's in good shape, that was made in the early 1900s, I would have snapped one of those up. The nice thing about this Rizzoli is it's a Mason stove, so it's got soapstone on the outside, so that soapstone absorbs it. That's one of the reasons this Blaze King is so great. It's not because it's metal, but it's the way it holds the heat in, and also there's not too much flame, but right now it is blasting. I'm sweating right now. It's so damn hot right next to the stove, but you hardly see any flame coming out of it. And I've got the catalytic converter isn't even done. If I flip this over and got that catalytic converter going, woo! I would have to move 10 feet away from this stove. That's how we get through the negative 10 and 20 when it gets to that, which is not that much, except this year has been the most we've had in such a long time. But if you live anywhere in the United States, in the North United States, if you're like in an area where you can do it, build a rocket stove. Build a rocket stove. Build a pechka in your home. That you can do even cheaper. Or go buy a stove. But get a wood stove in your home. If you live in the city, you're in an issue because your freaking zoning will prevent you from doing that. They that for a reason, so they can enslave you to the power and gas companies. That's what that's all about. It's not about the idea that everything's convenient. Convenience can be death in the future. Think about that. The ones who are going to get through this are the people who become more and more independent. More and more independence means you're going to have to be more responsible for things that you weren't responsible before, which includes heating, includes water, includes shelter, it includes, utilities. And it might be the idea that you're truly off-grid. Remember, just because you transfer from being on the public grid over into your own grid under your own wind or solar or water power does not mean you're off the grid. The same EMP that hits the freaking public is going to hit yours too, and then you're fried. If you're thinking true off-grid, you start thinking in terms of getting ship's lanterns. Because ship's lanterns, marine gear, that's why if you do have solar, I recommend getting marine batteries, because marine batteries run the best and have the best return and longevity than the other batteries that they sell with these solar kits. But true off-grid is you're able to light and cook without electricity, period. That means kerosene lanterns. And the ones I recommend are ship's lanterns. I'll show you one later that we got from a guy who was leaving the state. And man, we bought a lot of stuff off of him. And it was a fantastic kit. Mainly, they're decorative right now. They just hang from the ceiling, which is marine lanterns. But when we have to use those things, it'll light up the whole room just like we have electricity. We won't have to worry about having dark nights. We can continue to do handwork or whatever we need to do in the winter. I can go and reload still in the winter and not have to worry about not having sunlight or sewing, etc., or cooking. What if we don't have batteries? That brings the question of whether you can get recharging on your solar on flashlights. That'll extend things. But again, totally off electricity. What can you do in your house that will provide the same benefits that is provided by electricity but does not use electricity? Think about that. Or fuel. You ever heard about a cook box or a straw box? Straw box people forgot about, but in the old days, that's how you could actually cook, where you bring something in a pot. They do this in South Africa. There's a woman who makes these things as a grant benefit called a Wonder Bag. And what it insulates the pot and lets it slow cook for 8 hours. So what you do is you put something like a cast iron pot and you make a stew, or you put like a leg of lamb in there. And you bring to a boil, to a high boil, and then immediately after that you put it in either into the hay box, or straw box, and then you put the lid on top of the pot lid, the pot lid, and then you just let it sit. And in 8 hours you can come back. I found a cookbook from 1909, where it was common practice, and it was common practice around the world. Even the Arabs, the Bedouins, there's a Bedouin way. The Bedouin bag, they had a bag. So what they would do is they bring something up like a little lamb shank or a goat shank, and they would put it in a pot, and then they'd bring it up to a high boil, and then they'd cop it off, and they'd put it into this bag, and then they would hang this bag off their camel, and they would ride for 8 hours through the day. And by the time it was dinner time and they set up camp again, they would have a meal ready to go. It's the set it and forget, the true set it and forget it. Think in those terms. This is how you're going to get through. You're going to get through this by relearning the skills that your grandparents, not even your parents, and for some of you, your great-grandparents. For me, it's from my great-grandparents on. Somebody was born in the 1800s. My great-grandparents were born in the 1800s. Based on that, I have an idea that they had knowledge that's lost, but was common knowledge throughout the communities and throughout the societies at that time, which is how to cook without using all your wood, or now using all your propane. Wouldn't you just bring something up a boil for 10 minutes of boiling, and then just put it in a straw box, and then leave it and have it ready to go when you go off and do your chores around the property and come back, or you go off for the day, and you don't have to worry about your house burning down because everything's out. And you're not wasting gas if you're still using propane. You're not burning wood to keep it going for another hour to 2 hours to 3 hours to braise it. It's being braised. And he said, oh, but I want to get that nice crispy brown on it. Not a problem. Two things. If you've got a torch, like I do with steaks on the Traeger, all I do, here's a trick for you. You go get your torch, propane torch, and you just singe it on the outside. That's how I finish off when I'm doing cochinilla asado. You know, so I've got pork. So I'll put it in, I'll braise it for 3 hours, I take it out. I'll give you a freaking great recipe right now. If you want to do a fantastic pork leg with the skin on, nice and crispy, what you do is you put it in, you braise it, bay leaves, garlic, achote, rub it down with achote. It gives it a nice flavor and it gives it a nice orange reddish color to the skin. Garlic, salt, bay leaf, and thyme. And then douse it with a cup of wine and another cup of water. And then you put it into the oven. You bake it for 30 minutes at 350. I mean, for 3 hours at 350, covered with foil. Take it out when it's done, and you've done this with the skin side down. Now you flip it back over. You put it on the grill. Put it on the rack. You put it back inside. You pour out all the juice that was in there. You pour it on. You have it now with the skin up. You put it in after you've done it for the 350. You now put it to about 400, 425. And then that'll start crisping up and hardening up the skin. You take it out. If it's not crispy enough for you, like a lot of it's not, what I'll do, and you saw the picture. I put a picture in the post. Go look at it. That same leg, I take the torch and then I just run it over and I start to see the bubbling of the skin. Right when the bubbling of the skin, I keep on going. Sometimes it gets a little black, but it's just like with the Chinese when they do the Chinese suyuk, which is Chinese roast pork, not the chashu. That's suyuk. That is the full pork belly with a crispy skin on the outside. You know, you get a dim sum or you get it at a Chinese barbecue place in various Chinatowns around the U.S. or around the world. You get it when they get it burned sometimes. So all they do is they take a knife and they just scrape it off, and that's fine. Me, I like the actual taste on it, so I leave it on there, and I don't burn it that much. I just get that crispy going, and boom, there you got a fantastic recipe to do a braised. It's almost like it's like a cochinillo asado, which is basically the suckling pig, the way the Spaniards do, except I add the achote, which makes it more like an Andean style, which is the same exact way that they make the guinea pig. You know, if you've ever had it in Peru or in Ecuador. So there's a recipe for you. So we're getting ready to get you through this. You've seen the depressing stuff. You're going to have to make your own humor. You're going to have to make your own laugh. You got to understand now how your grandparents laughed at certain things and other things that are just basically like straight-faced. Because they went through things that you have not had the chance of going through. And hopefully you'll make it through it in the same way that your ancestors did, and you'll be able to carry your line down, or at least be able to see and share the knowledge that you have, that you've learned with the younger children, that they will hopefully be able to take back the world from this cabal, that they'll avenge us. I don't know whether I'll be able to live long enough to see this avenging. But that's why I stay for it. That's why I do this channel. With the idea that this knowledge that I have, because I have this knowledge that started really when my dad started reading to my brother and I. We were kids in Singapore. What? When he started reading to us, 5, 6 years old. No, so back in Saigon. Reading books to us. I mean, not like, like Green Eggs and Ham. He was reading. Imagine your father reading to you and you're about 7 years old. You can't even really appreciate this unless you watched a movie about the fall of Rome. But he's reading what was the name of that book? It was about the fall of Rome. It was written back in the 1700s. And it was basically about the fall of Rome. And that's actually what got the kernel for me to understand and start looking into history and what's happening. And become a hobby historian to the point that when I became a journalist, I became a professional historian because I had to go into areas, understanding what the history of that area. That's why I understand the difference of what's in Vietnam. That's why I understand that when North Vietnam invaded South Vietnam, these were two different people. If you look at people who are from North Vietnam and South Vietnam, they are physically different. The people who are in North Vietnam are actually Southern Chinese. If you go to southern China and you look at them across the border, genetically they look the same. But if you cross south of Da Nang and you go in south of what was the DMZ, demilitarized zone, you see the Annam people. To the west were the Cham people. The Cham were the Cambodians that became the Khmer. And then you have the Siam people even further west, and those are the Thai. Which Siam means, what does Thai mean? Siam means the brown people. Thai means free. Someone who says they're Thai means that they're a free people. Hopefully they'll be able to get that back too. It's a big question. This whole world has been taken under these banks. Remember, Amschel Meyer Bauer, the beginning of the Rothschild evil dynasty. As he said, I care not who controls the armies as long as I control the currency. And he's right. And think about that. You are giving your trust to a group of people who want you either enslaved or dead and think of you as cattle. And that's it. And everything that they've done for thousands of years as they've gotten into these countries, back into these countries that they were expelled from, is revenge. An eye for an eye. If you kick me out of your country, I will come back and I will rape and I will plunder your people. And they've done that. They've done that with currency. Think about that. These are deep questions. I'm asking you to go deeper. This is what's going to help you in the future. This is what's going to help you if you share this with your friends and family to get them thinking. Because they're all on automatic pilot. And you probably have been too. I was on automatic pilot. Remember, I talk from experience. I was on automatic pilot to be a combat photographer, to be a good combat photographer. I was on automatic pilot to make my first $1 million in Silicon Valley. Boom. But each time I get a wake-up call, I become a combat photographer, and then I go and I cover the Hmong Hill tribe people, the resistance, fighting the Pathet Lao. I'm trying to find the MIAs. I almost get killed. I see a bunch of poor kids getting killed in a war just to try and get back to their homeland, while the CIA has already fucking left them in the dust. And the only guy, I forget his name, but he committed suicide in Thailand. And he's loved by the Hmong people. I mean, the Hmong. Yeah. But all these people who are just being used by this deep state. And the deep state is just another connection. It's just another structure under this cabal. Remember, and it's cabals. It's various. And they're all vying for the same power. But they're also trading. It's kind of like when you hear that stuff about the reason that Epstein started hating Trump was because Trump found out about a deal on a real estate venture. And Epstein was trying to close in on it. And freaking Trump came in and swiped it out from under him. That's how these people play. They're allies. They're friends. They're Israel and the Trump administration. We're the best buddies. But we got to get the U.S. fucking killing their men again, and we can profit off of it. So, Trump, you better go in with us, because we're going in now. Oh. But Trump says, no, that's not. We're coordinated. We're going together. That's bullshit, and you know it's bullshit. That's why it doesn't sit well with you. You know, the frickin' Bibi got his command. Because remember, he's an actor too. He's not in charge of Israel. None of these leaders are in charge of their respective countries. They are placed there by the people who run the currency, as Bauer/Rothschild said centuries ago. God bless. Hopefully I've answered your questions. And we'll get ready for a new week. But have a great weekend. Start calculating. What are you missing? What do you not know? Go find out. Google is there not just to find out who's the latest frickin' fashion to wear, what's the next best thing that you need to own because somebody else has it. It's now time to be thinking, what do I need to survive a cataclysm? AI will tell you, with a grain of salt. But at least it'll get you thinking in a direction that you need to be looking at. Is that cataclysm an economic collapse? Is it an all-out land war? Is it an all-out civil war? Is it an all-out nuclear war? Is it an all-out partial nuclear war surgically designed in order to wipe out a certain amount of population so that it can be repopulated with the chosen? On that note, God bless and watch your six. Have a great weekend.